Julie, what excites you about the future of our work? Learning design, teaching and learning. Answer, that's a broad question, so answer that
Yeah.
kind of however you're excited to answer it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the whole AI thing is a big issue that I keep trying not to talk too much about, and then I keep having opinions anyway, which is very on brand for me. But um uh the I actually think that the virtual environments are going to be really
Mhm.
amazing. I'm just not sure what it's going to take to get us there. That ability to have, I do think one of the interesting things about the AI is that it's potentially going to help us bring down the cost of like virtual environment creation. Because if
Oh,
I can feed my CAD drawings in for, a piece of construction equipment, and then just sort of say, okay, now make some activities in the AI, like here AI,
hmm,
here's the actual specs for this thing.
yeah.
Build it in a virtual environment, and then let's have these activities, and it can potentially author some actual, virtual lessons and things like that with it without, because right now the cost of kind of doing that is high, and also the cost of the equipment's still high, the
Mm.
uptake on it is still, an issue. One of the big problems with like the VR stuff is that I don't think people thought through very well, like where are people doing this and how are we making
Oh,
sure they don't like
yeah.
fall over while they're doing it.
Yeah.
So some of the logistics of like these environments can be, like you need a safe place to do a VR thing
Mhm.
that's reasonably physical. I remember doing a VR demo at a conference once, and it was this snowboarding demo, and like there was literally the salespeople in the booth had to spot you because there was a chance you were going to fall over, if you were trying to like shift your body weight too much to
Yeah.
accommodate like the snowboarding thing. And, fortunately, I don't ever have to teach anybody to snowboard because that would be a bad idea. But nonetheless, like physical safety in a VR environment is
Yeah.
that's not a, a zero consideration. This is something you, so I'm still pretty excited about the potential for that because again, that really addresses that sort of rider elephant thing we were talking about before, right? Where
Hmm.
I'm leaning heavily on intellectual knowledge, but you're not having the physical experience or, kind of an immersive experience in a lot of cases. And so I still think there's a lot of potential there. The costs have been a challenge heretofore, but I do think the AI will get applied to authoring in VR environments, and that
Mm.
could really be, maybe the final like thing that actually brings that over to um, broader use and acceptance. I do think that some of that too. Right now, we're doing so much with virtual classrooms, and I think they're tough environments, right? When somebody goes to a literal physical classroom, it kind of creates a bit of an attention bubble, but it also creates a social space.
Yes.
And virtual classrooms are not there yet in terms of either of those things, right?
Yeah. Can you talk
Um,
more about that by what you mean by a virtual classroom?
yeah, so like if you're doing, I mean, whether you're doing something in like a Canvas or a Moodle or
Mm.
whatever, and it's asynchronous, like that's not the same as having everybody in the room.
Yes.
And if you're doing Zoom classes, like, virtual classroom that way, that's still not the same as having everybody in the room.
Hmm.
There's so much feedback that I tend to not get in a virtual classroom that I would be getting in
Yeah.
a face to face classroom. And there also are these added experiences that happen in virtual classroom, whether it's chatting at the coffee break if I'm doing or in a face-to-face classroom
Hmm.
if I'm doing like a workshop for the day or something at a
Yeah.
conference.
Yeah.
There's these liminal spaces for social connection. There's like one of the things that's actually super hard to do in a virtual classroom is to eavesdrop on how the students are doing because you tend to put them into breakout
Oh, yep.
rooms.
Yep.
And if you drop in as the instructor into that breakout room, you stop the conversation, which
Yep.
does not happen
Yep.
if I'm in a physical space and I just wander over by their table, right?
Hmm.
And I do that. Like they're doing an activity, they're in the middle of stuff, and I can wander around and eavesdrop enough to go, Are they on track? Are they where they think they should be?
Yeah.
If they're 5 minutes in, do I hear questions or things that I need to clarify? And I can do that without intruding or stopping
Hmm.
the flow of conversation in a physical classroom. But in a virtual classroom, I typically can't. It's much harder. I found a little bit of a solution to that, and then I'll typically use like a Google Slides document for them to be putting their work on and it's a single
Oh.
document, so I can
Hmm.
bump, and I have pages for each group, and
Yep.
I can kind of look over their shoulder that way, but I can't hear what they're talking about. Um, so there are all of these, like I said, liminal experiences or something like the eavesdropping during an activity is a thing that I can do in a physical space. It's much harder to do in a virtual online space.
Hmm.
And there are a bunch of those that I think we haven't really identified and solved with the technology yet.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, I mean, been a lot written and talked about with establishing, for instructors on establishing presence in
Hmm.
like an
Oh, yeah.
asynchronous classroom or
Yeah.
something like that. There's been a lot
Absolutely.
of conversation, and I think that's going towards that. But, you know, is it the same? Are we getting equivalent kinds of interactions with our students? Are we getting equivalent sorts of are the students getting equivalent sorts of experiences with each other? A
Yeah.
friend of mine did a master's degree not that long ago, online mostly, and it had that thing where they would go and they do a couple of weeks
Mm.
on campus in the middle of, I think in the middle, I can't remember, which helps. But when I think of the level of connection that I kind of did during my on campus, fully face to
Yeah.
face masters, in terms of like connecting with peers and hearing what they're working on and just having these casual conversations about what your projects are or what you're doing with it, or oh, you're doing a TA-ship over there and this and that's really interesting. And so there's a bunch of that. Now there are some things that are really amazing in online environments for forming connection or building
Hmm.
community or things like that. So I don't want to make it sound like there isn't some trade-off that
Yeah.
we're getting out of it, because like I can stay connected to a whole lot of people that I wouldn't have been able to stay connected to 25 years ago or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Hmm.
But being mindful about what's missing when we move into these technology moderated environments,
Mm.
and then thinking deliberately about how can I design for some of that in the environment that I'm doing, because it's not just about being able to like talk to a PowerPoint slide. So
Yeah. Yeah. Haven't seen all that many PowerPoint slides that I'd admittedly want to have a conversation
right.
with. As we wrap up, Julie, how can people support your work?
Oh, uh, if people have read either book, I have I'm feeling fraud about my relationship with Amazon, but it's still the best place for reviews, at least for the moment.
Okay.
Um, so reviews of the books if you liked them.
Yeah.
I suppose reviews of the books, regardless of whether you liked them or not, is the right answer. But certainly I'm a little bit more in favor of
Hmm.
people who like it going out reviewing it. But please, people should absolutely do their honest and sincere reviews. That would be great, particularly a new book, because that one's been a little slower to kind of pick up.
Sure.
Uh, from I My website is usablelearning.com. I've got resources there. If anybody has books, I have something on there that's a virtual book signing where I will send you a postcard that you can put in your copy,
Ooh.
with an inscription and things like that, so people can do that. That's great. Um, I have a Facebook group that's been a little bit quiet lately, but for Design for How People Learn. So
Okay.
if people have particular questions they want to ask me and they want to go in there and ask questions, I'd love that, because I can answer it, but also there's lots of other smart people who can also answer it, and then the answers get shared out with the whole community, which is also, I think, an excellent thing. So yeah, there's a few different things.
Wonderful. And again, for our viewers and listeners, we will have links to the books, the groups, website. Those will be in the video description. Julie, thank you so much for sharing your time, your insights, anecdotes, video game recommendations, all those wonderful things with the Association for Distance Education and Independent Learning. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.
All right, thank you so much.